Tim Cook announced that Apple is going to be um, basically integrating OpenAI tool ChatGPT into Siri. So Siri is going to be powered by the OpenAI LLM, which I think is really interesting. And I have some thoughts, but um, I'm really curious to like. My first question to you is, Alex. Do you use ChatGPT for anything consistently? Like, do you find a lot of utility in it just yet?
I don't. I'm not a big user of ChatGPT right now, but I may in the future for content writing for blogs, to be honest.
Right.
But yeah,
So here's the funny thing. I've found this to be very true. And now so in the world of SaaS, you have consumer SaaS, you have business B2B SaaS. Usually consumer SaaS has a much higher churn rate. Like it's like 6 months typically. Like consumers will churn after 6 months typically. B2B, it's very different. So B2B SaaS products usually have a much longer churn rate or lower churn rate, just sort of a much longer lifetime like cycle for that customer. And I think it's interesting because number one, ChatGPT is an anomaly here. I think most people will just continue to pay their ChatGPT subscription because of those sparse moments where they like, oh, actually, ChatGPT would be really helpful for this one specific thing that I need to do. Um, and ChatGPT reached 100 million users faster than any other company has ever done before, and they just crossed 3 point something billion-dollar run rate. Let that sink in. That's 3.4. I think it was 3.4 billion dollars in annual revenue, which is insane. That's
yeah,
crazy. And they also don't have these really quick churn for consumers. Additionally, there's almost like a new category now because whereas B2B SaaS was like, oh, the company has like its own subscription with the SaaS product. Maybe it's $10,000 a month, or maybe it's $10 per user per seat. Whereas ChatGPT does not have that, I think, like organizational capability just yet, where you can like add users to a team and then they can all use it. Basically, what's happening is companies are just paying their employees ChatGPT subscription. So it's kind of like this consumer SaaS revenue, but within a company. And the company's more than happy to pay it because it's like, hey, I want my team to just have access to these tools if they ever need them. And so they have this really powerful thing. But here's the challenge right now. Not many people have found like really, really robust use cases for ChatGPT yet in their companies. So I first want you to reflect on that and just kind of riff on it if you have anything. But otherwise, I'm going to jump into the Apple integration.
yeah. I mean, I don't use ChatGPT that much at all right now, and I think a lot of people are actually like me. But there are some, kind of techie people, savvy people that use it for coming up with ideas and writing things, essays or whatever the cliche use case is for kids in school. But um, you know, I think a lot of businesses use GPT on the back end of their AI companies, like generating, YouTube shorts from using AI or generating this picture using AI. I think a lot of them use the GPT stuff like as part of their, creating their AI software. So I think that's kind of a big thing for it right now. But yeah, I think it still has a way to go. That's my thought.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I mean, there are obviously lots of AI companies that are just using the OpenAI APIs to do their
Yeah.
thing. What I think is really interesting about the Apple integration is that despite the OpenAI APIs having this tool set called functions, where basically I can give, and this is where I think Apple is gonna really supercharge things, and I have some ideas about where it's gonna go, but um, there's this tool in the OpenAI API called functions. So it's not open for like regular users yet. Or well, I mean, I don't think there's a way for regular users to take advantage of it. But there's this concept of functions with the API where basically I can specify as a programmer, okay, I have these 5 functions. My code defines what those functions will do. Maybe it's send an email, maybe it's dig through this directory and find some text and then create a little essay or explain like, what's happening in this document or something. Let's say I have 5 functions. I call it function 1, function 2, up to through function 5. What I can do is I can give my LLM a prompt. I can give ChatGPT a prompt, and then it will go and execute the function that it thinks is going to be most useful for that. So if I say to ChatGPT, my custom OpenAI API endpoint and I say, hey, send an email to John explaining the new contract. It's going to execute function one. It's going to send the email and it's going to populate the body of that email with the text that it thinks I'm going to want to send to John. And really all that has happened there is this abstract, I have now basically given the LLM authority to go execute some task. Whereas in the past, it's always been, I ask a question and I get an answer, and then I still have to go do something myself, right?
Yeah.
So what Apple is going to do with Siri is probably leverage this concept of functions. Apple is going to say, okay, so we have all of these directives in the iPhone. There's obviously a Siri directive for setting an alarm. Alex, have you ever done that? Been like, hey, Siri, set an alarm for the next
Yeah.
morning. Yeah, everybody's done. In fact, Siri heard me there. So there's those types of directives, but now it's going to be ChatGPT between your voice and those directives. So you're going to have the LLM being able to execute probably many of these directives at once and in a much more a much less like prescriptive type of wording. Whereas like you and I both know, if I say the wrong series of words when trying to invoke Siri, she's not going to know what I mean, right? Whereas ChatGPT is different. It's actually very good at like just taking a broad stream of textual input and then like really understanding it and giving you a response. In this case, it's going to use those directives that Apple puts out and says there's probably 5,000 directives or 500 directives. And the ChatGPT model that goes in the iPhone is going to know how to invoke those different directives. The question will be, how much do we trust ChatGPT to get it right? You know, and I think that's ultimately that could be a very interesting challenge for Apple in doing this well. Is will users actually like will ChatGPT get it right? Because here's the thing: Siri, for the most part, it's very limited, but Siri rarely gets it like very wrong. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
rare that Siri will take what you said and then just go do something that you did not intend at all. Very rarely will Siri like start a call to like some random contact in your contacts if you get the name wrong. Although, I mean, maybe that's happened to people. Anyway, you kind of get where I'm going with this. I'm very curious to see how Apple solves that problem because it's definitely going to be a user experience hiccup if people are finding ChatGPT just like sending emails and making calls and sending texts without them wanting that to happen. Um, so yeah, what are you thinking there? Any ideas for
Yeah.
how that's gonna play out?
I'm interested to see how it plays out because I'd love to, there were a couple, like with me as a not common user, not a very common user of GPT, but however, there were times where I'm like, dude, I kind of wish I could just tell GPT or tell Siri to do something and like have it like follow this chain of like actual executives um, or executions of tasks. So it would be cool. I definitely use it if it's good. But yeah, you're right. Like getting it right every single time because AI is still pretty early. There will be that, but I'm interested to see, and I definitely think a lot of tech companies are going to be, using AI more, definitely including Apple. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, pretty cool. I'm hoping. I think one thing that's definitely going to change is like right now with Siri, there's very little like back and forth. Like if I say, oh, hey, hey Siri, I want to send a text message, she'll be able to start that up and then say, okay, who do you want to send it to, what do you want it to say, all that stuff. Whereas I think with ChatGPT it's going to be a lot more free flowing where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of hungry, hey Siri, I'm hungry, something like that. And then Siri's going to be able to be like, okay, well, you have a few ordering apps here, I can see, like, do you want to place an order from any of them, which one do you want to use? And it's just going to be much more free flowing. It doesn't need to follow this prescribed series of questions. Like if I ask the wrong question out of order, Siri's not going to know what to do. I think ChatGPT is going to add a lot more flexibility in there and then allow you to have much more like natural conversation with Siri to do stuff. And it's going to reach into apps and be able to execute things much better. So I think that's one kind of hopeful thing about it. But yeah,
yeah,
there's also, I don't know if you heard what Elon said about this. Did you see what he tweeted about it?
no,
So Elon posted on X, he said, this Apple ChatGPT integration is really creepy spyware, if you
you
ask
can
me.
share your
Oh,
screen if you want.
I don't have it pulled up, but
Okay.
he said if Apple allows ChatGPT access at the OS level of the iPhone, then it's just creepy spyware, and people should be concerned or something like
Okay.
that. Um,
Interesting.
which I do find interesting because that means it's basically listening all the time, but it always was, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. It's that could be an interesting, that'll be very interesting, to say the
Yeah.
least.